Welcome, everybody, to Software Sales Simplified Move to Success, our weekly podcast for software sales professionals who want to get better. Whether you are brand new to enterprise software sales or you're an old hand, please come by and join us every week where we share insights and the latest and greatest that's happening in the world of enterprise software sales. I am your co-host, Kevin Donville, and I'm joined by my good friend and partner, Matt Long. Matt Long and I have over 50 years of experience, software sales, services, and all kinds of things related to software. Matt, how are you doing today? How's your weekend been?
I'm doing fantastic. I actually just got off a 6-day fast, so I'm feeling energized. I'm feeling svelte, ready to go.
Outstanding. Well, it's the season for that, and you're in the neighborhood where being healthy and looking good is super important out there in the island of Hawaii. So I'm jealous. I think maybe I'll have to try something like that as well. And we're joined here today by our good friend, someone we've had the pleasure of working with. Our guest for today is Jessica White. Jessica, how are you? How have you been?
I'm fabulous. And now I'm thinking I might need a fast. That's probably exactly what I need.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, please. I need some tips.
Yeah, Matt's going to do a whole other series all about fasting and juicing and all that other
I
stuff.
love it. Sign me
won't
up.
be on our channel, but you will be able to find it where you get your local podcast. So it'll
I'll
definitely
subscribe.
be there. So Jessica, we've had the pleasure of working with you, and presently right now, you're a technology executive. You've been with IBM, Honeywell, and Microsoft. You've been with a lot of different companies. I know a little bit about your background. Matt does too, but our guests do not. If you would be so kind, take a moment, take the floor, and tell everybody about who you are, what you do, and who you work with.
I'm happy to, but first I have to say I am so delighted to see the two of you. We can't let a decade go by again. Honestly, we won't be around. I mean, we literally can't. But I've missed you guys. And, I have such fond memories of our time working together. And you both played a huge role in kind of the lens with which I see things now. And so I'm excited you're doing this and that you've invited all of our old friends who are, best in the business when it comes to sales acumen and just natural talents. And I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, very high praise. And we're pleased and honored to have you here as well. And yes, we got to make sure that we keep everybody in the loop a little bit more aggressively. It has been fun because it has allowed us, we've reached out to people we've never worked with before, folks that we are just kind of coming to know in our professional careers and trajectories. But it is always a thrill to talk to somebody who was instrumental and foundational in the way that I look at how I sell and treat customers and treat the industries. But I know all about that. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody about what you're doing now, what your role is, and all that other good stuff.
Well, you won't be surprised, but I've been very busy over the last, 12 years.
I can't believe that. No, I don't see it.
Anyway, so I am a technology growth leader. And honestly, that's kind of a new term. We start to see it more now. It's kind of a term I gave myself because it's hard to describe maybe what I do, but it's a new title. And so here's how I define it. It's really someone who builds new markets, new products, creates new channels. It's really about new or nascent, right? And doing it through the lens of growth. The mission is building something that's going to drive growth or bringing something back to life, resurrecting it from the dark side or wherever it was, but bringing it back and then driving growth for a company. And it's kind of like being a Swiss Army knife because, when when the three of us were working together with our fraternity of brothers and sisters, before I even met you guys, I had already done corporate strategy in channel sales, partner program development, all these things. Because by the time I met you, I'd already been at IBM for 12 years. And when you're with a company for that long, you can wear a lot of different hats. And then after being with you guys, I went on to then be a marketer, lead sales enablement, be a consultant, do all of these sort of things. And so I think of a growth leader as that person who has lived through or played the role of all these corporate functions. For me, it's all about having the DNA of sales and consulting, right, with customer at the center, but pulling from years of experience and working in all those different roles to say, how do I build something that's a practice, that's scalable, and that honestly brings life and love to people. Growth leader is, you've got in the heritage of, it kind of falls into the strategy category of roles. And you have this like heritage of guys and girls who maybe were McKinsey or BCG. And it's very like inorganic, top line. How do I find those 2 or 3 points? But that's, for me, just the strategy piece, which of course I can do and I do all the time. But a growth leader is like getting into the field, getting with the people, transformational businesses, like creating cultural change to make people want to be a part of what you're doing. Most of the time, when we're building something, first of all, when we're building something new, it's always hard. It always requires cultural change. And most of the time, the people you're doing it with don't report to you, right? So, a growth leader, you're doing a new thing, you're building something new. You have to find these ways of bringing people along and helping them see how they achieve success through it. And so, that's kind of how I brand myself, honestly, because I don't really know what else to call it. But honestly, I love it. And I have been officially a growth leader with that title since I joined Accenture. So 17 years at IBM, 6 years at Accenture. At Accenture, I got to build the IBM digital practice. I got to be a part of the Google business group. I got to lead our biggest Microsoft territory. I got to kind of work on the employee side of digital workplace. And now here I am in the operational technology space. So I'm kind of converging also IT and OT, now kind of living in that industrials and building space, doing what is probably, I guess we call like my 5th major practice.
You can't sit still, especially not in today's industry. I'm curious though, because all of those different roles and being exposed to all those different types of practice areas, the different hats as you just described them, along the way, you ended up developing kind of your own methodology as you were going through there, which was really kind of leveraging aspects of empathy at scale, if we could say that, so I believe it's called the circles of connection. What is that methodology, number one? And kind of when did you kind of come to that? At what point over the course of that career trajectory?
Honestly, I think I've been doing it all my life, but specifically at IBM. And it doesn't, the concept of circles and this, like, how do we connect in the digital age is what this methodology is all about. And it didn't necessarily come from this really great place. Honestly, it came from trying to survive layoff after layoff. Like 17 years at IBM, and I only got laid off one time. And that was in the very beginning of my career when I was supplemental, and they just went, no more of those, right? Had another job in 10 days. But the rest of the time for the next 15 years, I was just, ducking, to avoid these layoffs. And so you learn to develop really deep relationships and you learn to develop sponsorship in your board of directors and you learn to form these connections. And it was much, much later, only about 2 years ago, that I sat down and said, oh gosh, this is actually a thing. And the thing it is it's an approach that shortens the space between me and you, right? That if we really look into who we are, if we know who we are, then we can easily find those relation points to other people. And the opportunities to connect and to be the same and to feel aligned are endless. And in fact, they far outnumber our differences. But it requires that we sort of sit down personally and make an effort at knowing who we are so we know how to relate to other people. And so the methodology kind of goes through these circles. And by the way, circles is like, we've been doing this since the beginning of time, and we can dive into this in a minute, but, kind of goes back to our primitive DNA and where we came from. Primitive man and who to today is not that long a period of time. It's 200, 300,000 years, right? And if you go back and you look at the heritage of lions, for example, it's like you can find fossils back 2 million years. We haven't had that long to evolve. And so we're actually the same people, right? You look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and at the bottom, once you get past, food, shelter, water, the next layer up is safety and security. And honestly, most of us are operating every day out of that space of assessing, is something a threat Is it a friend or is it a foe? And if we approach connection through the lens of how do I help this person feel comfortable, safe and secure, that we're aligned, that we're the same, that we live in the same circle or community, we're part of the same circles, then we can expedite our ability to work together. And in sales, that means expediting the path to yes.
So when you're doing this, I mean, it's both a personal outlook as well as an organizational outlook, right? But it all stems, I think, from the individual, that you have to understand this sort of mindset first, and then you kind of bubble it up to a community or organization in terms of how you then together focus on certain things. I'll take an example just to take a little bit of a sidetrack, but I spent many years at Burning Man running camps and things where you're just trying to herd cats, right? And there's two approaches to it. And I think this is the same in business. You know, you can have this stick where it's like, if you don't do this, you're going to
Mhm.
get punished, you're going to get X, Y, Z. Or you have the carrot, which is like, this is our common goal. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is how we can be great. This is what
Yes.
we're going to do. And I found that much more effective. And I think that somewhat aligns with kind of what you're doing. But what are some of the techniques you use to instill that sort of group outlook or group goals, you know, that everyone can buy into?
Yeah. Well, first, I'll say that what you're describing is a growth mindset. A growth mindset says that I really believe we can do this. And that if we invest the amount of time and effort and whatever into it, we can build the skills and the intellect, the practice, the acumen, whatever, we can do it. And you don't see failures as a way of reinforcing that it can't be done, but you see failures as opportunity. And so you're right, it is a lens. It's like you can approach things. And I worked across 12 different companies at IBM. And then since then have been through many, many more. And so all of us, and you guys are the same way, have seen different cultures and healthy cultures. And honestly, when it's bad, we learn the most. When it's great, we grow the most. That's how I think about our time together when we were with Tea Leaf. You know, before that, it had some really bad managers, and I learned what not to do. But then when we were working together, I was inspired around what to do. Right. And so it is like, there you can either be part of a command and control culture that dictates you must, and if you don't, there's consequence. Or you can come at it through the lens of wanting to optimize human potential. We're all human. We all have the same struggles. We all want to be successful. When one of us is successful, if we do it right, a whole bunch of us are successful. So why not approach it through the lens of how we create platforms where other people can be successful, find their success, be a light, versus, the way some of us have seen it in other places. So anyway, I remember your question now, but you got me thinking about growth mindset.
Well, it's interesting because, some of the organizations you've worked with are pretty large. But to
Yeah.
your point, we as human beings, not that far along the evolutionary path, right? In terms of, you've seen those calendars where it's like the dawn of man. If you look at an entire calendar, it's like
Mhm.
we're like right before New Year's Eve at the end of the calendar
Right.
kind of thing.
Exactly.
So in the current tech that we're in, where it's all digital, is it easier? Is it harder? How do you manifest and make sure that you're managing those connections
Mm.
correctly in the current world?
Well, I think, we've always like if when we were all working together, if I had developed a methodology for connection, you would have said, "Oh, that's cool. I can use that in sales, or I can use that in my nonprofit pursuits or board level pursuits, or like I get it, I can connect with other people." But now it's become an imperative because we are living in an epidemic of loneliness. The digital platforms that we all sell. I mean, this is what I do. Digital workplace is what I've done in a lot of my roles, and then of course all the other technologies that we've sold are all about connecting us, right? But it's those same platforms that help us feel more removed or more isolated. And what that really means is that it creates a superficiality to our connections, to our engagements. It's really easy to hide behind a camera and to do your thing at home and to not venture out and to not make an intention to get to the next level of depth in your relationship with others. And so what's happened is we are all more connected than ever, but we're actually more lonely than ever. And the numbers are really crazy. It's like nearly half of US adults report feeling lonely. That was in a 2023 report. This isn't COVID. This isn't during the pandemic. This is post pandemic. The people feel that way. And we know from the research that's been done that we don't get the same biological need met when we're virtual. And I mean, everything I do is, I mean, I do a ton of stuff that's virtual. But the truth is that we have a biological need to connect. And when we don't feel connected, just like in primitive man, we were living in a community, you know, it provided safety and security and social, all those things fed us. It's what we need as part of our core DNA. When we don't have those needs met, we actually start to have all kinds of health problems. Like literally, it's killing us. You know, you have higher rates of heart disease, you have higher rates of diabetes, and then, of course, loneliness itself, the emotional toll that that takes, just can pervade so many other health challenges. So when I use circles, it's really in a proactive way. It's really like, okay, how can I, whether it's you're caring for an aging adult, like your parents are aging and you need to get them care at a nursing home. You're working on a board and you want your board to work more effectively. You're working on a team. Or like we would use it is like, how do I become a trusted advisor to my client? You know, like that's how we use it. But the reality is that when we're not connecting, that it actually does have really negative impacts. And so in the digital age, it takes more effort and it takes intentionality. And that's what circles is all about. It's not super complex, but it just puts steps behind how we can do this better.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it's something that's pervasive and certainly prevalent for the last several years across our society about this loneliness epidemic. Thinking back to my earlier career when I was single and working a
Mhm.
lot, et cetera. I mean, work was my community. It was my social group, et
Yes.
cetera. And there was so much time spent together, you know,
Mhm.
at work, after work, doing things, et cetera. Then having a family has also mitigated some of that because, of course,
Mhm.
spending time with my family rewards me in so many different ways. And almost all my connections professionally now are over video. Now, part of that's I'm in Hawaii, right? So there's an aspect
There is
to
a
that.
physical barrier,
There's
right?
a physical barrier, but I find I work best when I have regular check-ins with my
Yeah.
team or people that I'm working with.
Mhm.
And then it has to be augmented though with a physical connection though, you know,
Yes.
because I agree. It's like I know people virtually, but until you get together with them, share a
Mhm.
drink, share a meal, share some
Mhm.
experience and just look at each other and have that experience, it does take it to another level. So I'm curious now with just the remote nature of all these teams, right?
Yeah,
How do
do
you
it.
kind of bring this together? Is it about having more on-sites or team building things, or what would you suggest to companies to help foster that environment where people can come together in a physical fashion?
Again, it's about intentionality, right? Like I allocate Fridays to get out of my house,
Mm,
not to go in the office, to go and sit down with a colleague over lunch, you know, to connect with people in my network, to work with my mentees, you know, being in a global role and building this, I'm building a new channel right now. It's never been done I'm in a 117-year-old engineering operational technology firm doing a new thing. Man, you got to get out there in the field,
mhm.
right? I mean, first of all, you have an engineering mindset which says there's a process. I don't know what this looks like. It doesn't have a process. I don't know how to do it. Right. That's the first thing. But then you also have just the fact that it's a new thing and that people have to be a little courageous and they have to kind of get out of their comfort zone and they have to feel protected from leadership and supported through commissions and all this sort of things. It takes, you know, at the global level, I'm doing all this sort of the infrastructure to help people feel comfortable, but you got to get out in the field. And last time I did a podcast on growth, leadership, and connection, I was in Dubai because I was connecting with our team in MEA. And
Mm,
honestly, that's one of our most successful regions in terms of aligning with this new channel because the physical connections were made while we were there. We had all these meetings. Maybe, like Matt, you're far away, but when you're stateside, you probably schedule a whole bunch of stuff so you can see a whole bunch of people. And that little bit of time and effort spent to be physical, whether it's 20 minutes or it's 2 hours, it takes you, it's such an accelerator in how you work together. And then when you're applying the lens of connection, saying that I have some curiosity about how we're the same, what's going on in your life, how can we relate and feel like we are more alike than different, then that 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 hours feels like much longer. I recently did a sales workshop with WITI, the Global Women's International Technology Group, and we did these breakouts, these workshops, and we use Venn diagram because I'm a consultant by trade, so we love a Venn diagram, love it.
Nice.
You put together a Venn diagram that showed, people who'd never met, they didn't know each other. They used the circles methodology. They mapped all of their circles and communities, which is what we do in circles. They said, okay, well, I have 2 siblings. I'm from this. I like to hike. Whatever. You find all the things that are you, all the things that are them. You find the overlap. And at the end of it, the feedback was, I feel like I've known this person for 2 years, and I literally just spent 10 minutes with them. That is the intentionality. And it does, I think the physical part, 1, it's good for us. 2, it's an accelerator. It expedites the trust. Like we build more trust. We feel like we've known each other longer. And that allows us to feel comfortable doing new, hard, complicated things together.
In this day and age, my last manifestations before Matt and I went and hung up our own shingle, I was in a global leadership position, and literally my team was spread all over the globe. And in this day and age, that could be really hard to sit down and find opportunities or create opportunities, budgetarily speaking, to get into that kind of physical proximity with people. There's usually global ones that take place at some point over the course of the year, but they can be very hard to do because, everybody's pinching pennies these days.
Yeah.
In that circumstance, what would your advice be to somebody who's trying to establish that degree of connection with their team? If I dare use the word, that degree of intimacy with the people that they're working with so that they can get those benefits, what are some of the tactics or some of the approaches they might consider?
Well, in my last practice that I was building at Accenture, I created this program called We Are the Workplace. We were about 100, I think it was 90 people. And we were selling the sexiest stuff in the business. I mean, digital workplace, screens, AI bots, AI concierge, whatever. It was sexy stuff. And we were losing people left and right. And it's because people didn't feel like they were part of a community. And if there's tons of research on this, but especially millennials, and of course, like some of us millennials are not that young anymore. My brother's a millennial. He's only 4 years younger than me. He's a millennial. But, as you go down the different generations, they crave community. They want more community. And so what we did is we created a whole programmatic approach to feeling connected. So I was a managing director. We had open office hours. It would just be me and 4 other people. That's it. Having a conversation, talking about our lives, letting them, like being vulnerable, allowing people to ask hard questions and feeling like they're in a nest. We called it water cooler talks, where we would crowdsource, like, what's your favorite books? What are the things that are nourishing you? The podcasts, we'd have somebody come on, like every time we did it, a different person would kind of host. So again, we're not command and control. This is Jessica's program. I'm telling you, all the content that is a part of the program came from the people on the call, and it's being led by the people on the call. And so we're talking about the things that nourish us and make us feel, and a lot of this was during the pandemic, right? So it's like, what apps are you using? What books are you reading? Like, how are you spending your time? And then we would center that around enablement. This is who we are as a community. We're all behind this offering. This is how we're doing it. You can do it too. Let us show you how. You have someone come in and talk about anatomy of a deal. If someone sees that someone else has done it, they believe they can do it too, right? So everything was programmatically designed for connection, even when you were in these really broad environments. And it changed our metrics. We didn't have the attrition problem anymore. We had people stepping up and saying, "Oh, I want to own this, and can I contribute to this, and can I be a part of that community?" But it's one of those things where you have to be intentional and you have to stay in the game the whole time. You can't turn your back because now you have a community of people who are being fed by a platform, right? And so you just have to be committed to it. But that's one way virtually to do it.
Yeah, I love all those ideas. When you are part of a community, part of it is not wanting to let the community down and wanting to perform and stuff. And I think it's a great motivator, internal motivator. It's not like you feel like you're obligated to things, but you really want to try hard to contribute
Mhm.
to what's going on. I'm curious though, since we've been talking a lot about kind of internally within organizations, because I've seen the same thing in sales cycles now, right? You
Mhm.
imagine the intimacy and connection and level of trust is even less, right, as a seller to client. And there's so many examples of just clients ghosting you, after you've had these long conversations for months and things like that,
Yeah.
and I've always encouraged people at some point, you got to get on a plane and go there, even if you can't have a meeting in the office, because not everyone's in the office. At least go have lunch or dinner or coffee or something, with this person to have that connection. Are there any additional strategies that you apply there? Because you obviously don't have the ability to create the same community things that you can
Mhm.
internally.
One thing that I love, and I just got reintroduced to, I just got reminded how much I love this strategy, is that one of the big challenges in sales is people feel like, okay, they're selling to me, right? And we always, as salespeople and practice leaders and growth leaders, what we're trying to do is just feel like we're on the same team. Like, I want my customer to be successful. I need to know what makes you successful. That means we got to connect. You got to tell me, I want to be a part of what you're doing. And one of the strategies that I would use with my clients so that I felt more connected to them, or they felt more that I was a trusted advisor enabler for them, is being case study one. So, like at Accenture, we would always do the thing. We would implement the technology first ourselves, and then so when it came time for me to go and sell that thing, instead of saying, "Hey, do you want to buy this thing?" or "You have this pain point, I have a solution," we would say, "Let me introduce you to your peers, people who've been on the same path that you've been on, the same journey. They're in the same place a year ago, 2 years ago, they were in the same place you are. Help you build your peer group of people that can support you through this challenge so that not only are you learning how to solve the problem, but you're broadening their group of trusted advisors that can support them. And so you're the catalyst to them feeling supported. Again, we get back always to that biological need. If I'm pitching you, or if some, let's just take like a telemarketer, right? That's like the worst case sales, right? So they're calling me. Okay, I don't recognize the number. I don't know who they are. I go straight back to biological, safety and security. I go back to my Maslow hierarchy of needs. I immediately are like, is this person a threat? Am I safe? What do they want from me? Now, if I am introducing someone to their peer group because they have a problem to solve and I want them to feel more supportive and have a better friend network and colleague network, well, immediately you're in a place of safety. They're supporting me versus a threat. So I think always going back to that biological need. Like we can't every interaction starts with safety and security. So when you address that up front, like let's say I was a cold caller, a telemarketer, and I said, "Hey, this is Jessica White. Kevin Donville sent me your way. He said we have a lot in common. He felt like we should connect." Well, you still don't know who Jessica White is, but you know who Kevin Donville is, and Kevin Donville's a friend. And if Kevin Donville sent her over, wow, it must be okay. She's safe,
Right.
right? And that's what we do in circles. It's like communicate, figure out who you are, figure out who I am, find the overlap, but then learn how to communicate it in a way that's reinforcing all of those common elements.
I can see now how you're bringing in the external aspects, the customer into the conversation and talking about being able to employ this methodology to them as well, not just the internal people inside the organization. What's been the result of taking on that kind of methodology with respect to the success of your team? has been able to recognize and realize?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So, as a consultant and managing director at Accenture, I was not only using connection with my clients, but I was observing connection, right? And I could tell that whether the teams were connected and aligned very early stage. And if you're good salespeople are really good at watching. They're looking for soft cues, they're looking for body language, they're looking for eye contact, they're looking for also really avert cues. The client's not showing up to the meetings, I got a call. You're putting like if you're good at seeing the signs early, you're realizing very early in a project when things are not connecting. And then you can do something about it. You can say, okay, these two people either aren't making enough effort or they're never going to connect. They can't find the Venn diagram overlap. So I need to switch somebody out. This happened to me when I was on a project when I was a consultant. I could see the personality clashes. I could see like the tension it was like a slow build, but it felt like a tidal wave coming. If you're paying attention to how people are connecting and whether they're connecting, then you can do something about it early on. And I think like just naturally using this um kind of help do that.
Yeah, I mean, it all's going back to just, if you're in a room with 5 people presenting, you can read all those signals. If you're
Yeah.
on a Zoom, maybe you get some
Right.
of them, right? If you're on the phone, forget it. I mean, it's like it's really hard. And email, another thing, chat. Oh my God, don't even get me started. I just want to throw one more wrench into the works here, though, when it comes to
Yeah.
this. AI,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Now, people are using AI to initiate conversations, continue
Yeah.
conversations. Sometimes you don't know who you're talking to. Talk about no signals at all. I think AI is great, and there's a lot of very valuable uses for it
Oh,
in the
100%.
sales process, in any process, really. But
Yeah.
we got to understand it's not just a process, it is a human connection and understanding and agreement, micro agreements of how you're going to proceed, whether they're
Mhm.
verbalized or not. Can you talk a little bit about AI and how that maybe disrupts things or how to accommodate for that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite topics because it takes us back to friend or foe. It takes us straight back to authenticity, right? If you don't know if the person you're talking to or you're texting with or on the other side is a real human or that they understand your needs, you're going to have trust issues from the very beginning. And so AI has the equal ability to be an accelerator of connection as it does to be the biggest inhibitor of connection. And yeah, authenticity is where we're going to really be challenged. And that's why it's so important that we continue to just have that human element in all of our relationships. I see all these big brands taking the human element out of their relationships because it's cost cutting. And we were doing this when we were all working together. It was like how do I shorten the amount of time on the call to solve for a person's need? But we were doing it with a technology that helped us see the customer's issue from the outside in, right? The whole concept of the product we were selling honestly changed the way that I look at everything because it was all about the customer experience. And now what we see with AI is some of that, but we sacrifice a lot of customer experience and we do a lot more for bottom line. I think when we're working with AI, we have to apply a rubric. One, we have to hold AI accountable to the same ethics that we have and the ways of working that we expect other people to adhere to. I have to go through ethics and compliance training and business conduct guideline training every year. AI should have the same standards. And I think every company should look at the applications of AI and the rubric that they should use once you get past basic ethics and business control guidelines is this helping my workforce or is it hurting my workforce? Because the goal is to optimize. We want to optimize people. We want to give them a platform for success. We want to align their strengths to need. There's this really great book, Think Like a Monk. I don't know if you guys have read it by Jay Shetty, but he talks about this concept called Dharma. And Dharma is where you have your strengths. But if you're not connecting those strengths to a real need, then it just falls short. So if we can find the places where people's strengths are aligned to a need, then people are optimized. They're happy, they're performing better. We have what he calls Dharma. And that's how I think we should use AI. I mean, there's obviously some things like we're managing contracts. We need to understand the content of our contracts better. Doing it just through human mechanisms isn't being successful. There's obviously use cases where, you should apply AI for efficiency and all that kind of stuff. But if you think about just even that scenario, I don't want my people sitting, let's say they're in procurement or legal, I don't want them sitting there reading contracts. I want them saying, what do I do with this contract next? How do I optimize this contract? How do I consolidate these things? How do I get efficiency? So that's, I think, the lens with which we have to apply AI, and we have to be even more intentional about being authentic.
Boy, that's a big lesson learned there, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. And there's so many AI companies that are out there right now, and I can't help but wonder how many of them are thinking ahead about what it is you just described there. Some of the products you work with have AI in them right now, but
All of them, almost all of them.
yeah, exactly. And you're just like us, you're probably being inundated on a daily basis with the latest AI, insert name of AI company here.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, some advice you might give to someone who's at that stage with an organization? They're either building a program or they're building a product, they're leveraging AI so that they don't take their eyes off of that goal.
Well, again, it goes back to the rubric. Are you optimizing your human talent and solving for a need? Like, I'll give you an example. In the business that I'm in, we have an aging workforce. The engineers that work on the rigs and, in oil and gas and all these different refineries, places like that, they're aging out. Because, the factory might be in a remote location and people, younger generations, they don't want to be there, or they don't perceive factories as being intelligent. It doesn't have the technology that they're used to. So we're solving a problem with AI because we actually don't have the people to do the work anymore. So we have to have more intelligence and we have to have more knowledge stored. But then I want to recruit people into my field. I need humans to do this. So I'm using AI then to say, okay, how can I give you field support, where I send you out with a device with 5G connectivity all around, and you can then go and have everything you need if conversationally, because you're using generative, and know what to do with that asset or that device. Or like in a building, how do I take it and make it a better place for people to work because people are more comfortable temperature wise, or I'm able to assess how people are using the space. And so I can make it more modular. And so the building becomes like a living building because we're changing the way it's shaped and the way it operates based on the demand. There's all these ways where we can use AI to solve a problem because we don't have people, but then also optimize it for people.
This is a great conversation, Jessica. I really have enjoyed every part of it. I just have one more question around this, and this is more about how do you get buy-in from the senior leadership that this is needed or this is a program to or approach to take? Because a lot of times they might be focused on bottom line and just execution, all this stuff, and then being able to get buy-in from them from top down. Because of course, if it's not set at the top, I don't think this is successful. But what are any techniques or tricks you can use there?
Yeah, you can use every trick in the book in the field 101 with people. But unless someone says, we're doing this from the top, here's the comp plan that goes with it, here's the framework, you might have like some small gains, but then you're just going to be set way back. So it is really important that you have executive buy-in, and a company that really wants to grow, the executive leadership sees the opportunity for growth, or if it's a healthy culture, they are open to having a conversation. If you can get a forum with that someone hired a person like me to begin with, or they hired a person like you to do a new thing. There's a sponsor there. If that person can open the door and then everyone can see the potential, and then they can again see the platform where they're successful. Right? Those C levels, they have metrics. this thing is going to make them successful. We don't do it to feel good. That's a side benefit. We do it because it drives real material revenue growth and returns to the business. So you got to find compelling ways to open those doors and get that buy-in. But, good growth leaders and compelling salespeople, they know their pitch and they're thinking about their customer. Whether it's an executive or whether it's a external customer, there's still a person on the other side of the table. With Tea Leaf, we always looked at seeing the world through the lens of that other person, seeing it through the customer. And it's the same here. So, when you're meeting with those executives, what is going to make this person successful? Like, what are the catalysts that this can perform for them that's going to help them leapfrog, help them personally? And so, it's using all those strategies for help them to see their success in what you're building, because that is, we talked about the field connections as an accelerator. The executive connections is a huge accelerator. You really have to have both. You really have to have both.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks, kind of tying this all together here. There are a lot of organizations that are really struggling right now. There's some folks that are listening to this call right now that aren't even in an organization anymore. They're transitioning and they're having that to contend with. But for those folks that are still in organizations that are struggling, what would you say, based on everything we've been talking about today, what would you say that the key thing to give them? What would be, what do they really need to be focusing on right now in order to make themselves more successful?
Well, now that, my friend, is a spiritual conversation. Honestly,
Okay.
it is. Honestly, it is. The job search is a journey. I call it career management. My husband had to coach me into it. Like, a job is not a destination, it's a stop along the way. You got to kind of, it's hard to be unemployed. We've all been there where you're like, you're separated from your purpose. A lot of us find purpose in work. I encourage everybody to find their purpose outside of work, in community and family and hobbies and all the other things that nurture us. But when we're thinking about job search, to me, that's a spiritual conversation, because you got to believe there's a bigger plan. There's a reason why I met the two of you, and that we clicked and we had this golden age of sales, and that we had this fraternity, and that we're all like friends. We will always be friends. That played a huge role in my development, but Tea Leaf was a stop along the way. There's been, 15 stops since then, right? So whether you're earning a paycheck or not earning your paycheck, there's purpose in what you're doing. Like, if you're not getting your purpose from work, you're not getting your connection from work, man, there's a ton of nonprofits that need you, or you have something to say. Look at what the two of you are doing. You are helping people be more successful. You've created a platform for people to be more successful based on your experience. And you're giving that back. And even when we're not fully employed, we have the opportunity to do that. That I developed circles when I was in one of those periods. It gave me purpose, and it helped me say, okay, I do have something of value outside of this day job thing to contribute. And so the answer is, it's a spiritual journey. There is a bigger plan. There is a purpose for your life. You are worthy and have value if you don't do a thing today. But the thing is that you can do so much even when you're not just working for one employer. You still have value. There's so many ways that you can help people, love people, connect with people, provide meaning, especially for us in this phase of our lives. It's all about, there's younger people coming up. It's so inspiring to see them be successful. I mean, most of us have 25 years or more, right? Like, spend that time with somebody who needs it. I mentor a high school girl, and I don't know who's benefiting more from this. Honestly, I think it's me. She has just touched my heart. I mean, she is amazing. Every time she has a success, I feel successful. And not because I did it, but just because I was a part of it. It's just, there's so many ways to find meaning in life. And on the career thing, I mean, we just have to constantly, you just got to remember, it's not a destination, it's a journey. So constantly connect with your network. Take Fridays, go have lunches, have conversations like we're having here now. Constantly be in touch with those people. Actively interview. You don't know what the market wants until you're constantly in front of another party at the other end of the line that's asking you questions, right? So it's a journey, but it's a beautiful journey. And I think we can all find a lot of meaning. We can find a lot of connection. We can all find a lot of value in it.
Absolutely. And I find everything that you're talking about here, you say it's spiritual. It definitely is enlightening. Definitely is enlightening from that perspective. If somebody in our audience wanted to know more about the methodology that we've been talking about here with you, the circles, what would be a good asset for them to go take a look at? How would they be able to find out more about it?
Yeah, I do workshops. It's kind of my give back. I do them a lot for nonprofits. I do them for boards. I'm happy to do them for sales groups. It's just something that nourishes me if I can help others. There is a page on LinkedIn called Circles of Connection where I curate content that kind of supports the research behind connection and the need for connection, how we create connection. And then I'm always out there talking about this growth leadership concept because I do think there are people like me who, we didn't stay on one conveyor belt our whole career. It's not easy for people to know what to do with us, but there's a lot of value that can be given if we can put that person in the right role. I have some podcasts out there on the growth mindset and just encouraging people to kind of move from this, top level strategy, margins, points, inorganic to what can we do together? How do I build platforms where others can be successful? Because when others are successful, I'm successful. And that, of course, includes AI.
Absolutely. Well, I am intrigued. I've already seen a couple of your podcasts. I think I want to go see a couple more because I was learning a lot when I was watching them. They're fascinating.
Awesome.
If somebody wanted to reach out to you, Jessica, if someone wanted to try and connect with you, what would be the best avenue for them to do that?
Yeah, just find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, through you. They can find me through you, through both of you and our little fraternity of friends.
Well, we're definitely going to put in the description of this episode. We'll have some of the links over to some of those assets you just described so that people want to go and learn more about the methodology, want to know more about you personally. They'll be able to go and reach out and do that. And as much as I hate saying this, we do need to wrap up our episode for this week, but it was spiritual and it was enlightening. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come in and share your perspective with Matt and myself and also with the folks that are tuning in today. It was really appreciated.
Well, the honor is mine. I'm so grateful to be reconnected with you guys. I love what you're doing. You are helping people with what you do. And I love that you have this platform. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. It was our delight and our pleasure to have you here this week. And folks, that does wrap up our episode for this week. I appreciate you spending time here. I know our guests and Matt does as well. Matt, anything you'd like to go and share before we go and close up today?
No, but I feel inspired. So thank you, Jessica. Nice way to end
Thank
the week
you,
here.
friends. Thank you.
Great end of the week. I absolutely agree. So, folks, thank you for spending time here with Software Sales Simplified, Move to Success. Please join us back here again next week. We'll have another guest and we'll talk about more interesting topics in the world of enterprise software sales. If you would like to know more about Jessica's material, her methodology, and the other podcasts that she has been involved in, we will have links in the description. You'll be able to go and take a look at those and get to those. Or if you'd like to go to our website and learn about the methodology that Matt and I have produced that you hear us referencing all the time on our show, you can absolutely go there as well, where you can get your own copy of Winning Faster, the Move Framework for Enterprise Software Sales Success, where you can buy that right off of our website there. But that brings our episode to a close. And with that having been said, folks, please remember to like, follow, subscribe, comment on the show. It really helps us with the algorithms of the different platforms that we produce on. If you could take a moment to do that, we'd be greatly appreciative. But more importantly, we'd love to see you here again next week. So until then, take care, be well.